Hello and welcome to this evening's episode of History on Your Doorstep here on Borough Radio with me, Graham Loveluck-Edwards. In tonight's episode, we have a distinctly naval feel. Yes, I know that we've already done episodes about the RAF and we've already done episodes about the Army, so it was high time that the senior service got a little bit of representation. And why not? I mean, it has inspired so much down the centuries, to say nothing of poems by the great. People like, for example, Lord Byron, who wrote, "The armaments which thunder strike the walls of rock-built cities, bidding nations quake, and monarchs tremble in their capitals. The oak leviathans whose huge ribs make their clay creator the vain title take of Lord of thee and arbiter of war. These are thy toys, and as the snowy flake they melt into the yeast of waves which mar alike the Armada's pride or spoils of Trafalgar." Lord Byron there, possibly a bit of an off day because he's trying to rhyme Trafalgar with Mar. I mean, not for me to say. Anyway, so in tonight's episode, I am going to be talking to a couple of people who served on some absolutely iconic vessels in the Royal Navy. You'll be hearing from people who served on board the Royal Yacht Brittania, on board HMS Invincible and the Ark Royal. And you'll be hearing their recollections of what it was like when they first joined up, when they first had their post, what it was like on board those incredible ships that we've just described there, and some of their memories. So tonight's episode, very much a social history. And of course, history doesn't have to be ancient. We don't have to be talking about things that happened hundreds and hundreds of years ago. In tonight's conversations, we will hear things about the royal family. We will hear things about the Falklands War. Lots and lots to get stuck into. So let me start by allowing them to introduce themselves to you and telling you a little bit about their service history. First, I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Ron Davis.
Well, I'm Ron Graham Davis.
Okay.
I'm not Welsh.
Right.
I was born up in Shrewsbury in Shropshire.
Mm-hmm.
And then I joined the Navy at the age of 15.
Okay.
But when I was working, Chuckwood Engineering, they made safes.
Uh-huh.
And I worked on a safe that was going to Australia. They left me in England. The new lad that came, he went to Australia with them. And that's why I joined the Navy. I went, that's it.
You thought you'd see the world.
I was 15 when I joined.
Yeah.
I was at HMS Ganges.
All right, okay.
Right down the south of England.
And Gareth Booker, what about you?
It's a weird one, that. So originally, we look back, what me and my family laugh about it, because there was never no interest from myself to join.
Yeah.
So I completed GCSEs, completed my A levels, and I was just stuck with not knowing what to do. I lived in Roos. University really wasn't my thing. The education route that way. I'd always had an interest in engineering, building, fixing things. I'd always be stealing my dad's tools and that sort of stuff, tinkering in the garage. And sport, I was massively into sport, be it swimming, surfing, life saving, running, that kind of stuff. So it was actually my brother's friends who said to me, "Well, why don't you join the Navy?" And at the time, there was a chap already in the Navy. He was from Roos, Leighton Yap.
Mm-hmm.
His brother, I was in his year, John Yap's year. It was his brother, and he had already joined up a few years before me, and he was on a fast track apprentice scheme, and he was doing really well for himself. So the next day, I rang the career centre, booked myself in, and that was it. It was all, yeah, it was just all go ahead, and it's back in those days. The process was much slower. So we're talking 22 nearly years ago. There was not such a heavy demand to get people through, and there's such a shortage of manpower. As we don't like to say a shortage of manpower, but the shortage of manpower we have right now.
Yeah.
So the process was fairly long, but yeah, that once I got into it, yeah, that was it really.
And you were away. Fantastic. So, when you joined, what was the process? What did you join as? What was your area?
So with my education, I had A levels and GCSEs. I actually could have joined up as an officer. When I looked into it, it just wasn't me. When I spoke to the career advisor in Cardiff at the time, it just wasn't me. I was more hands-on. I wanted to be doing stuff, and the route of the officer was more writing reports, that sort of stuff, admin side of it. So, yeah, so I booked in to my local career centre, had a job basically a job interview, kind of with suited up, decided what branch I wanted to go into. So at the time, it was called an MEM, a marine engineer mechanic, which has changed its title now. But in the olden days, we were called stokers.
Right.
So I joined up as a marine engineer mechanic. And from there, that was in 2002. First place I had to go really was Raleigh from there. So
Yeah.
after being successful in that, I joined HMS Raleigh in June of 2002. And I believe it was a 10-week course, or a 10-week course there. And that was basic training. So that was learning how to march, learning how to polish shoes, learning how to iron, all these things I took for granted, which I didn't really have the skills to do.
Yeah.
I did it there, like shooting a rifle, an SA-80, damage control, started basic sea survival, tying knots. It kind of like, that's where it kind of, well, everything started to grow, learning about the Navy then. And then like, that's when the passion started, and, it's just started thinking, yeah, this is definitely for me.
I joined, it was HMS Ganges to do training. Because you've got to be 16 before you can get into the Navy.
Right.
Well, donkeys years ago. I think it's all altered now, but I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I've been left a long time.
Yeah.
Down there, I've done all the training, like, whatever you want to do. I joined like as a seaman.
Yeah.
So I was always on the upper deck or somewhere. And when we went to sea, eventually, I was in charge of guns.
Okay.
Up on the top of well, they've done the whale now. There's a gun thing, two round things on the side of it.
Yeah.
And then you picked up the enemy aircraft. And this thing on top of the bridge guided the guns onto the plane that was coming in.
Oh, right.
Yeah, they used to what's the name? Send over planes. Not doing anything.
Yeah.
Just so you could pick them up and put the guns onto that direction. That's what I was like as a gunner.
Right. Okay.
Nothing else.
Yeah.
Didn't fight. I was a marksman with a 303 rifle at the time.
Yeah. And then once you finished your training, what was your first posting?
It must have been the barracks, like HMS Victory in Portsmouth, because that's where I was stationed originally, in Portsmouth.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was posted up there. I'd done training in there on 303 rifles.
Yeah.
And I had the cross armbands, but I was a marksman. We done all the shooting and everything else. And like the little officer in charge come up and he said, "Who's on number 5?" I said, "Me." He said, "Well," he says, "you're way past your target points. You're doing very, very good." That's how I've become to get a marksman.
Yeah.
A marksman, but anybody come, shoot him.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I trained on, some guns.
In my class then, we were all, it was like a mixture, so none of us really knew what we were doing. We were like headless chickens running around. So we were a mixture of medics, engineers, aircraft engineers, all different writers, stewards, chefs. We were just a mixture of everything, and I actually think I'm the last one out of my class to still be in the Navy. And after that, it was onto a bus, so I successfully passed out after about 10 weeks of basic training at HMS Raleigh. It's what we call phase 1.
Yeah.
And after that, it was to start learning my trade, so start learning my engineering. So I joined HMS Sultan as a young, what was I been? I'd have been I'd have just been 18 then. So yeah, 18 back in 2002. Joined HMS Sultan and started basic engineering because even though I had a passion for it, I didn't have a clue what I was doing.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was basic engineering. And the beauty of it back then was anyone. I didn't need, to be honest, I didn't need. I was overqualified at the time. I didn't need the GCSEs and A levels for what I was doing, which kind of helped me because a lot of the boys who had and girls who had joined as engineers who didn't have those grades, they had a chance to do their basic maths and English, which was required. So that saved me that part of time. And then it was a year course, basically in Sultan, of learning the trade itself. And then from there, it was you get to speak to your career advisor, career manager, and request on what ship you wanted to join. It took no consideration of what you said and just chucked you wherever you wanted to get, wherever you needed to fill a gap. So if you say, yeah, I definitely want to be in Portsmouth, you're probably likely to end up in Scotland or something like that.
So our 2 new recruits are now on board. They've been through basic training and pretty soon they're going to be given their first postings. So we're going to take a short break now, but please join us again afterwards when you'll be discovering exactly what it was that Ron had to do to entertain the royal family and exactly how it was that Gareth broke HMS Invincible. Hello and welcome to part 2 of History on Your Doorstep here on Bro Radio. In tonight's episode, we are going through the recollections of people who served in the Royal Navy. We've got 2 guests with us, Ron Davis, who served on the Royal Yacht Brittania, and Gareth Booker, who served on several aircraft carriers, amongst others. So we've been hearing in part 1 all about why it was they joined up in the first place, what it was they ended up doing, and what basic training looked like. But what was it like once they actually started to come to grips with a posting?
So I had no preference, to be honest. I didn't mind what I was going to do. And I ended up, my first ship was HMS Invincible, the aircraft carrier.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, so it was pretty cool. So that was my first aircraft carrier. In fact, it's probably the ship, but I don't know if it's just because it was my first ship, but it's the ship that always stands out in my memory, and it's always been my favourite.
Even for the uninitiated, HMS Invincible is something of an iconic ship. It was an aircraft carrier commissioned back on the 17th of April 1973 and was built by Vickers Shipbuilders in Barrow-in-Furness. Construction was famously plagued by delays, everything from design changes to industrial action. When she was finally constructed, she measured 677 feet in length and 90 foot wide at sea level, known as the beam measurement, and 115 foot wide at the flight deck. Her draft, which means the height from the waterline to the top of the hull, was 24 foot at full load, and she weighed 16,000 tons. She was launched on the 3rd of May 1977 by Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, and she became the Royal Navy's lead ship in her class of 3 light aircraft carriers. She was armed with a Sea Dart surface-to-air missile system and carried 22 Sea Dart missiles. Invincible's air wing consisted of 801 Naval Air Squadron, equipped with 5 Sea Harriers, and also 820 Naval Air Squadron, equipped with Sea King and anti-submarine helicopters. The reason she stands so long in the memory for us mere mortals was because of her role in the Falklands War in 1982. Invincible was due to be sold to the Australian Navy, but 3 days after that agreement, on the 2nd of April, Argentina invaded the Falklands, and Invincible was called up as part of the task force alongside HMS Hermes. The image of Sea Harriers launching from Invincible off the coast from Port Stanley in the media coverage of the conflict sits long in the memory. She eventually became the Navy's flagship in her class when Hermes was sold to India.
So I joined the Invincible, and then we actually decommissioned her. So we actually sold her off, and
Right.
as it happened, she got scrapped, which was sad times. And then from the Invincible, I joined Illustrious, and that was about in 2006 then. So I had a good couple of years on the Invincible.
Yeah.
And when you get on them, straight away it's task books. So we don't call them task books anymore. They're journals, engineering journals. But back in the day, they were called task books. So it was like homework, additional work. So if you completed a task, you would have to go off to someone of a higher rank to sign it off to say that you had done it. And then once you completed that, you could start going up promotions and getting your next rank up or your next grade up or your next pay increment. So from there on, I just built up the task books and got completed and started the promotion. But the problem we had back in those days on those on ships is we were competing as stokers against the artificers, which no longer exist, but they were like a fast-tracked engineer. So what they joined up the Navy, and they were pushed really fastly through the ship's like systems and all of like the equipment we used, and they were just churned out, and they would pick up their next rank very quick. Whereas some people back in those days, 20 years ago, would spend their whole careers in either an able ratings position or up to leading hand. To go past then back in those days wasn't really a requirement.
Yeah.
Whereas nowadays you have to. You have to progress in your career, otherwise you go on warnings, and then there's a good chance of getting kicked out. Yeah, so after Invincible, which was the flagship, she got decommissioned, and then I joined the Illustrious. And I've got a bit of a pattern because I tend to decommission ships. They don't last long after I.
It's just once you've been on board, that's it. They're finished.
It's nothing to do with my engineering standards. Yeah, I haven't.
It was all right when I left it.
But I have been on a few of the Discovery Channel documentaries.
All right, okay.
Yeah, so I was on the Illustrious and the Ark Royal at 2 different times. I can't remember which was which, but I think it was the Illustrious. We had a major flood, and I was the leading hand of the watch, and it was my watchkeepers that flooded a compartment. Well, they forgot to tell each other to stop filling up the water tank, which ended up nearly writing off a compartment. And then I believe it was the Ark Royal where we had a problem with the fuel tank. It like the tank delaminated itself, and I had to build a cement box around it.
Oh right! Oh wow!
Yeah, that was quite cool because there's no chance I would do it these days. I wouldn't fit in the bilges anymore. But yeah, it was quite good. Yeah, I had to go which is new to me because I didn't even know we did that sort of stuff. So it was another thing I'd learned, and yeah, I had to knock up a cement batch, make up the cast, and go into the bilge and fill it up. And it was really good actually because the Discovery Channel made it look like I was really successful, but the next day we were in dry dock because it wasn't successful. But they didn't feature that in the Discovery Channel. So, yeah, so everyone thinks I was some sort of hero, but really the ship was in dry dock the next day. We were actually supposed to be sailing to America, so a lot of people were unhappy, and then some people were actually happy. So we had mixed emotions for that one.
So it's a Bro Radio exclusive to have the man who broke.
I cannot confirm nor deny that I damaged any aircraft carriers under my control.
Another iconic ship, of course, was the one that Ron Davis served on, the Royal Yacht Brittania. Now, Britannia was launched from the John Brown and Company shipyard in Clydebank, Scotland on the 16th of April 1953. For over 44 years, the Royal Yacht served the royal family, travelling more than 1 million nautical miles to become one of the most famous ships in the world. To Queen Elizabeth II, Britannia provided the perfect royal residence for glittering state visits, official receptions, royal honeymoons, and relaxing family holidays. For Great Britain, she was a majestic symbol of the Commonwealth and a proud ambassador, generating billions of pounds in trade deals. For the royal family and 220 dedicated crew of the Royal Yachtsmen, she was home. Today, Britannia is a 5-star visitor attraction, an exclusive evening events venue in Edinburgh. But what was it like for Ron Davis?
And said, Davis, the captain wants to see you. I thought, oh, that's it, I've had it now. And went up to see the captain. He said, "Do you want to still join the Royal Yacht?" I said, "Well, yes." He said, "Oh, 2 o'clock, you're flying back to England."
Wow.
So I went, he said, I said, "I can't pack my things, too much to carry."
Mm.
He said, "Don't worry about that." He says, "We'll clear all your locker of everything." He said, "Stay as you are, and you're flying home to England." From there, then, I was put onto the Royal Yacht.
Right.
I was sent home when I got back to Portsmouth, the barracks, and I said, "I got no kit." So "Don't worry, you're going on a fortnight's leave." So I went on a fortnight's leave, went back into Portsmouth, and they said, "You're joining the Royal Yacht now."
Wow.
And there's all this stuff. It's already backed up for me to join the Royal Yacht.
Absolutely brilliant.
And they got a taxi from the ship where I was, or the barracks, down to the Royal Yacht, which is based in Portsmouth all the time.
Right.
And that's how it all came about, to get on the Royal Yacht. I mean, it's hard to put. Like when you're in barracks, you're not wearing all the uniform stuff. It's like on the yacht, you get a new uniform, see? All it's made to measure for you.
Yeah.
With all the Royal Yacht badges on.
Yeah.
It's 7 years, something like that.
Right. Okay. And what were your duties on board?
I was a seaman.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Doing all, well, not so whatever.
Yeah.
On the boats.
Yeah.
I spent my time on the boat. Well, I spent my time 4 years on board the Royal Barge on Brittania.
Yeah.
And I was bowman on the Royal Barge.
Mm-hmm.
And when you was on there, the bowman, there was a signal, see, you had a window there, used to knock that window and getting into harbour, or wherever the Queen or whoever it was going ashore. And you would tap the window. I got up, he got up the back because you had a boat up drill. Then to do.
Yeah.
As we went in.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Fantastic. Now, on board the yacht, obviously there were royal duties. There were times when the yacht was visiting foreign shores and going on things like that. There are also times when it was used in conflict. Were you on board in any of those times?
No, so the last one it was in was getting all the people from, was it Aden, I think it was?
Yeah, yeah.
And the Royal Yacht was out at sea, and they filled everywhere on board the yacht. They slept on the decks, inside and everywhere, all these immigrants like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course the Falklands was famously dispatched as a hospital, wasn't it, for the Falklands War?
For the Falklands War, that was. I don't know if I should say it or not, but on there, see, we always done a show.
All right.
In the Pacific, when we got to the Pacific, because it was 14 days at sea going to Australia.
Yeah.
We always used to land going to Fiji to pick the Queen up, because the Queen didn't like crossing the Atlantic in rough weather on board there.
So something anecdotally I've heard is that most of life generally on board the Royal Yacht is spent cleaning things. Is that true?
It's not true,
Oh, okay.
but it's always clean, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, I mean it's gleaming. What in the days, it obviously no longer in service. When we used to see it, it was always gleaming.
Like on there, well it is. It's a special paint that goes on there. Going into Australia once, into Sydney Harbour.
Yeah.
Because I was at what they call the side party, to make certain everything was all right. And the officer in this side said, "Right, Davis," he says, "get over the side." I said, "We're still mobile," which they were, but, plodding along slowly. You had to go down then on a rope, down. They passed the paint down, just to paint the anchor, which all the blue would come off and all that.
Yeah.
And they pulled you back up then, and went into harbour. Yeah, but no, it was a wonderful life on there, because there was always the same people on there.
Yeah.
As crew until they had their time and left.
Yeah.
No, it was a wonderful life, and luckily enough, we weren't married at the time. We came back. So the second world trip we'd done, and it was the last cruise, because the admiral on board had asked or he told everybody that he's gonna contact the palace, and he's gonna contact the Admiralty, that the wives can come on board and we take them to sea for the day.
Oh, wow.
But I was bound on the royal barge, and the officer was always a lieutenant in charge of the big barge because of the Queen or whoever. And I said, we're not married. I said, don't worry about that, she can come. And he wrote her a letter to say, to get to so and so. And we picked them up and took them to sea, down through the Needles, the Isle of Man. Yeah. Not the Isle of Man, Isle of Wight.
Yeah.
And out through the Needles, which is 2 towers and it's a narrow entrance, like. Mm-hmm. And took them out to sea for the day. They had dinner on board, and then they come back into harbour with us, but they couldn't be seen on board. Mm-hmm. And that was that, back into Portsmouth. And
how fantastic. Yeah, that was brilliant. Are there any kind of stories that stand out in your mind, I mean, besides that one, or anything else that either amused you at the time or entertained?
Well, we used to have concerts on board.
Oh, right. Oh, you started talking about the concerts? Go on.
We always done things on board there to cross the Atlantic. Yeah. Yeah, and everybody trained up then to do things. Yeah. I shouldn't say, but one bloke, we got, what's in there, my photograph? Yeah. We were dressed up as the Royal Guard up on the palace.
Oh, right.
With the hat, yeah, all made up. And then on there, our face was painted. Right. And then, and the mouth. And we went on board, and of course we're moving this. We walked onto the Colonel Bogie. Yeah. 44 of us. Yeah. And there's the Queen and Duke, and we sat from here, and that all away from us, because that's where the stage was, like where we were. Okay. Yeah. There's a photograph here of the Duke being crossing the line. Right. Being dumped in the tank.
Oh, right, okay.
Because that's where they do when you cross the line.
Yeah. The timeline, yeah, the internet, yeah.
Yeah. And that's how it all worked out.
Okay.
We I did on there. I circumnavigated the world twice on there. Yeah. Which was a fantastic thing
absolutely.
To do.
Absolutely.
Every country in the world we've been to.
Fantastic. Yeah. So what was your most treasured memory of serving on the Royal Yacht?
Being with the royal family. Yeah. Taking them ashore in the barge and things. You were always there. Yeah. In case something happened, but there was always an officer. Yeah. He was always the best swimmer if need be. Okay. In all the times and places that you went, what place sticks out in your mind the most? Where would you say your favourite was? The favourite? It was going into TD and meeting all the girls in the grass skirts.
Oh, right, okay.
Oh, good heavens above, scantily clad ladies in grass skirts, what would Her Majesty say? I think we'll all know what Prince Philip would say, and it's probably not repeatable, so now is a really good time for us to take a short break, but please join us again in part 3, when we continue with more anecdotes from time served in the Royal Navy. Hello and welcome to part 3 of History on Your Doorstep here on Bro Radio. Tonight's show, a clear nautical theme. We've been talking to people who served in the Royal Navy, listening to their recollections of what it was like, of what they encountered, and what life was like for those who served.
So what was your favourite posting? What's the one that sticks out in your mind as being, oh, that was the best?
My favourite was probably when I was on fishery protection, I would say. Mm-hmm. So I served on all 3 carriers, finishing on the Ark Royal. And then I went on leading hands course, which was a year back in HMS Sultan. Mm-hmm. And it was basically back to lessons and learning an advanced engineering scheme then, mm-hmm. And also the leadership required to take on that promotion. And then I joined. So I was always used to massive aircraft carriers with squadron embarking, with the Harriers, Sea Harriers back then, which aren't with us anymore. So we're talking 800. So when we got fully like crewed up ships, nearly 1,000 people. Yeah. To a fishery protection ship, which has got best part of 30 people on it.
Right. Okay.
And it was, yeah, I think they was, because on the aircraft carriers, you tended to have the engineers didn't mix with anyone else. Every branch kind of like stayed to themselves.
Yeah.
You didn't tend to go off and speak to the other people because they're not in your branch. They're not good enough to talk to you. But when you got onto a smaller ship, that mentality was just completely gone. The responsibility was huge because it was a tiny ship. You had multiple bits of kit. Whereas on an aircraft carrier, you could hide behind 20 people if you needed to, and someone would pick the slack up. So I think that was probably one of my most favorite ones, and it was also something different because I could actually see where we were getting used more. So we were around British waters, and we were just policing the fishery protection. And it was really good to do. So we were boarding fishery ships. We were checking their nets were like legit. We were checking what they were catching, checking their fish books, making sure we were basically policing the waters. And anyone who wasn't abiding by the rules of the sea, like the fishery protection rules, we were taking them into Dover and taking them to court. No, it was just something different, and it was just a watch system. So whereas on an aircraft carrier, you'd get a 6-month deployment, 7-month, 8-month deployment. You come back and then you've got to work all day. Or on these ships, we were away, say, 4 weeks, home 2 weeks, away 4 weeks, home 2 weeks. So it was getting more home life balance better.
Yeah, sure.
Which was starting to get more important for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've got an environment like the Navy, and I'm sure it's the same in all the armed forces. You've got a lot of people together in a confined space who have to get along with each other. You generally come away from environments like that with some pretty incredible stories. I mean, what are the memories that stick out for you of those moments where, those moments you will never forget?
Well, I can't go too in depth with
And
them.
nothing that's nothing that's
Some
going
of
to breach the Official Secrets Act.
Not just that, I don't want to get people in trouble.
Well, that as well, yeah.
But I tell you what, though, some of those moments you form like a brotherhood with some people,
Yeah.
and you form like some of my best mates of people I haven't seen in I might not have seen in 10 years, but I know if I picked up the phone, they would drive halfway across the country to come and meet me if I needed it. And it is a harsh environment to be in because you're on an aircraft carrier. I keep going back to them, but the engineers mess, it was a 30-man mess.
Yeah.
So there was 30 of us all living together, and there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these messes. So it shows how many engineers were on board.
Yeah.
Now you had to be, if you weren't, if your cleanliness wasn't up to standard or anything like that, you would know. Back in those days as well, you would be told, and there would be some unofficial punishments. you would have to deal with it. But mess deck life was always fun. On board ship, you're only allowed an issue with 2 cans of beer a night, and that's if you were good. You could easily have your privilege taken off you. So there was no chance of getting on it in the evenings and that, because what people forget to remember is that the ship is live 24/7, and even though we have a daytime job, in the evenings or throughout the day, the machinery needs to be maintained 24/7. So that's where we fall into a watch keeping routine, which really does mess with your sleep pattern. Even to this day now, I just randomly wake up at weird times thinking I've got to be somewhere. And the silence, sleeping in silence is a weird thing when you're used to having pipes next to your head with either fuel going through them or water or the sound of electric, which is you think it's crazy, but the humming of the cables and that, because when there's an incident on board, they stop everything, so the ventilation stops, everything is shut down. So when you're on board and there's silence, that's the scary part, because next thing it's going to be followed by a general alarm, which is either going to tell you there's a potential fire, there's a flood, there's a crash, there's an intruder, all these different types of things. So if you're either fire party or you've got responsibility, you're fast asleep, and all of a sudden in the back of your head, you're like, I can't hear anything. You just automatically jump out. And even now, sometimes I'm like, I get a better night's sleep with a bit of white noise.
Are there any final anecdotes you'd like to leave us with from your time in the Navy?
Well, I'd say we do have these things for new joiners, and I've been caught out on a few things. And I think one of the ones I got caught out on was on the Invincible. So we were at sea, and what we have is every day we have a set of daily orders, and a daily orders is a blueprint for the next day's how it's going to run. It's a diary for how the next day is going to run.
Yeah.
Now you have to read daily orders, because if you're late, if you're late or you're adrift for anything, the first thing they'll say is, "Did you read daily orders? Why are you late?" And I remember reading it one evening, sorry. And we were about a couple of days from getting into Gibraltar, which was going to be one of my first runs ashore. And there was a story in there, and there was a story about that Gibraltar had been I can't believe this. I'm telling you this. Gibraltar had been overrun by monkeys.
Okay. Yes.
But they required a team to go out with rifles and start removing these monkeys. And they needed volunteers. And I was like, I am up for this. So it was a case of the next day at 1:00 in the afternoon, go and report to the hangar for monkey cull duty. I think there was only 2 of us out of 600 people who had read that. We rocked up to the hangar. And oh my word, if I'd never seen so many people just point and laugh at us. It was absolutely unbelievable.
Oh,
and now I'd say that was one of my funny ones, and a couple of things we've had which are quite historic is when we had David Cameron come on board.
Oh yeah.
And we were on the Ark Royal, and we were in Canada, in Halifax. And it was just before the Queen was due to come on board and meet us. And he came on board in Halifax, and he came onto the flight deck, and it was a clear lower deck, which meant everybody had to be on the flight deck to hear this brief from David Cameron. And he was up there telling us how thankful he was for us, how good a job we're doing, how much he respects the armed forces, how great a ship the Ark Royal is, and how important her history is. And the next day, they decided to scrap it. He literally fed us a pack of lies. He told us how important we were in that, and the next day, you're now going to be homeless. And there's other things I've done. I've competed in the field gun.
Okay.
For my ship. That was quite important. I've played rugby for my ships, so I've had the opportunity to travel around the world playing sport. My family's had the opportunity to come out to Dubai. I was able to. Yeah, I was on Minesweepers at the time, and we were based out in Bahrain. And because we don't get to go home mid-deployment, we have what's called a CO's week, and we get to choose 5 days where we want to spend alongside and have our family come out. So I've had the opportunity to have my son and my wife and Leanne, my wife, fly out to Dubai 3 times, and stay. And it's been paid for by the military. By the Navy, so I think all we had to pay for was the flights. But it's things like Independence Day. I've been in New York 3 times for Independence Day in uniform. These opportunities. I look back after you asking me about to come to have a chat with you. I started making notes and looking back, and I was like, wow, some of these things I've even like triathlon's my passion.
Yeah,
and I race and compete. The Royal Navy triathlon team, and I get to wear Royal, even though I'm not that good. I get to dress up and wear Royal Navy kit and make it look like I'm amazing. you go to a race and the amount of people who just absolutely drop they might be cheering on their husband or wife, and then they see someone in the armed forces come through and they just forget about them and they start cheering us on. It's amazing.
Well, how absolutely fantastic. I have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation, listening to memories of people who served with the Royal Navy, for sharing their experiences and what life was like. I'd like to thank my two guests, Ron Davis and Gareth Booker, for their recollections. And I think we can all sleep much safer in our beds, knowing that there is a drill in place should Gibraltar ever be overrun with monkeys. That's all we've got time for this week. The next edition of History on Your Doorstep will be at 7 o'clock on Monday the 25th of March. I really look forward to speaking to you then. But until then, thank you very much and goodbye.